There is an underground civilization underneath of the North American continent.
It's Coast to Coast AM overnight, every night on WGNS Murfreesboro. Now an update from the The Good Neighbor Network, FM 101.9 and AM 1450 Murfreesboro, FM 100.5 Smyrna, and online at WGNSradio.com. This is the Roundtable. A look at the news, views, politics, and people that are shaping Rutherford County.
Welcome into the Wednesday version of the Roundtable here on WGNS. Glad to have you with us on this warm Wednesday morning, and be listening. We'll keep you up to date on the weather forecast, but things could get a little dicey later on this afternoon. And my guest today, he has a very good source of weather information with Bree and Leland and Henry and Nikki D and all those folks at Channel 5. It's Forrest Sanders from News Channel 5. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing good, but they're the experts on it.
They are.
Don't ask me any questions about weather because I flat out will not know.
Yeah, absolutely.
I got to ask them.
Yeah, one thing I do want to ask, put it out there to the listeners today, and you can text us at 615-893-1450. And I grew up on a farm, and knowing this time of year you've got your warm snaps, you've got your cold snaps, and all that. And I'm pretty sure we just went through red bud winter. And I need the listeners to text up here and let me know how many more of these little winters, like blackberry winter, is coming up. So that's your homework for today. Also, if you want to get in touch with a question or a comment with Forrest Sanders, feel free to do that. Forrest now at News Channel 5, formerly at Channel 4 in Nashville, and is now I updated your bio, 34-time Emmy winner.
I'm glad that you updated it because I haven't gone in there and switched that yet. But you got it right. Yes, that's
and we were just talking about that your humble abode in Nashville. Are you going to have to add on a room for the Emmys?
Man, like it's a mess. Everybody always asks that question, like what have I done with all of them? And see, they give us these boxes,
right?
When we get our Emmys, and so I've just kind of stacked all the boxes up in a room, and I have the Emmys just kind of on top of that. It's super messy. I don't really know the proper way to display these, and I know this all sounds really braggy right now, but listen, I'm going to tell you something. I cannot sing, I cannot dance, I certainly can't cook, I can't do any of these things, so I've got this one thing.
You can spin a yarn.
And so I'm riding this train until I croak, okay? So like this is something that I am going to keep out there.
Well, I tell you, your skill set in the news business is very unique, and you're using it to its full potential. If you watch the feature stories that that Forrest does, and again, like we mentioned, 34 Emmys he has won for his work, and also he is has been nominated for the Ernie Crisp Photojournalist of the Year, the Solo Video Journalist of the Year, and Reporter of the Year from the National Press Photographers Association.
Chip does his homework.
There you go. And
thank you. Yeah, that just came out last week.
Yeah, and the other thing really proud of is Forrest matriculated right here in Murfreesboro at Middle Tennessee State University. Yeah. Understand you are you're a Collierville native,
yes,
in West Tennessee, home of the Dragons.
That's right. So, that's right. I've got my class reunion coming up in just a couple of weeks. It was a small place when I was growing up, and it has grown up into a big place.
Oh my gosh! Between Collierville and Olive Branch,
yep,
it all has in Cordova, it's all kind of gotten big down there.
Great hometown, though. Beautiful town square.
Yep, absolutely. And you're again close enough to Memphis for whenever you want to get into Memphis or Germantown. And you could get there, but you still had the hometown feel.
That's right, and it was cool. Like growing up outside of a music city, which is Memphis, they're a very bluesy city, and you've got the Elvis factor and the fact that Aretha Franklin is from there.
Yeah.
Then moved over here to Nashville, and it's a different kind of music city. And it's been interesting getting to know some of the people who were the architects of that as well. So two different flavors, two different cities, and then and then there's the food on top of it. Memphis is a dry rub ribs kind of city, and now I'm in a hot chicken city.
A hot chicken and typically more wet barbecue sauce on the ribs up here. So those rivalries between the music and and the barbecue continue. Obviously, somewhere along the way as a kid, you something spurred you to be able to want to tell stories.
Sure.
and the TV business and journalism kind of got its start somewhere in your head. Can you pinpoint what turned you on to it?
Well, it was the right mixture of things that I enjoyed, because I did really like writing when I was a kid. I thought when I was a little kid, I thought I was going to write books and that sort of thing. And then on top of that, I liked the public speaking element of things. I was a speech and debate nerd when I was in high school. Well, I certainly wasn't going to. I wasn't good enough to be in any sort of athletics. So you look at me, believe it or not, I did not play football. Shocking, I know.
Shocking as it may be, yes.
So speech and debate was kind of my thing. I liked the public speaking aspect of things. And then I was really into horror movies growing up. And
as he wears his Stranger Things T-shirt today.
Yeah. Well, I've always got some sort of horror movie shirt on. It's disappointing the days that I have to dress like an actual adult, because usually I've got some sort of horror scary thing that I'm wearing on my shirt. And the reason why I like horror movies, and this has always been the case, it's not because I'm a genuinely sick individual. People always want to diagnose you with something. It's like, this must be why you like horror movies. I like the way that they're shot. I like the way that they're paced. It's the mechanics of them. Because in order to make them effective and make the moment scary or suspenseful, it's all in the shots that they use, how long those shots go for. And so I like the mechanics of them. And so when you take all of these different elements and put them together, it makes sense the sort of job that I do. And I can honestly tell you, I don't think that I could like a job better than what I've got now. As an explainer, I am what's called a MMJ, a multimedia journalist, which is somebody who, in addition to being a reporter, I also do my own photography and my own editing. I was an only child, Chip. I'm not good at sharing. So
understand.
I like being involved in all the different elements. I have a real attachment to the stories that I'm working on for that reason.
Well, we've had two other MMJs that have come through here on this show recently with one of your own personnel there, Mr. Davis, Chris Davis, and also Emily Kinzer. I don't know if you were in school with Emily.
I wasn't.
She was right after you.
I was fixing to say I'd like for you all to think that I was in school with Chris and Emily, but no,
you were before that.
I was I was a year or two before.
Yeah, and I was a year or two before you. But
right.
Now I will tell you off air. But my friend Emily Kinzer, who was an MMJ, graduated from Middle and went on to worked in Indianapolis and then was a morning anchor in Fort Myers. She and her still relatively new husband, she got out of the news business, and they now are on a catamaran throughout the Caribbean, and and she does her own little YouTube reality show.
I've heard about this.
Yeah.
I haven't watched it yet. I hear they have an awesome dog that's on this show.
They do. But but when you grew up and you had that want to write, and then you figured, okay, I've got to go somewhere to college to hone this skill and get what I need to get that first professional job. You chose to come here from Collierville. What were always interested to know what brought people to Murfreesboro and MTSU.
I wish I had a great story for this, but this is truly what it was. For one thing, my circle of friends in high school, we all kind of had an interest in going into media in some way, and MTSU was known to be this journalism school. And then on top of that, okay, so growing up in Memphis, there was this broadcaster that people knew. He worked at WREG. Name was Jerry Tate, and he had been on that station for years. And he was kind of the guy that I watched when I was growing up. And so we bumped into him shopping for ties one day, which I guess is a very newsman thing to do. He just happens to be out there shopping for ties, and we talked to him about it because I guess I would have been 17 or something at that point.
And he was nice enough to.
He told me MTSU might be the right pick, and if Jerry Tate says so, then that's good enough for me. And so that's where I ended up, and I think it was the right decision.
Well, and when I had Chris Davis on, and I've also had Stephen Faust on about his book A Leaf in the Stream. What was when you got here and because I've seen you write a bit about Stephen and the story you've done on him, but your experience here in becoming a better reporter, learning those skills, learning how to write, not only as an MMJ, a multimedia journalist, writing for TV, but writing for print and all of that. Did you feel like that? Well, they prepared you to unleash yourself on the world?
Yes. Well, I mean, it's one of those things it's one of those jobs that until you get into it, it's hard to be 100% prepared. But I think Steve Faust made us as prepared as we could be. He was tough. Right. I think it looked like, and I say this as he's the best teacher that I ever had, truly. Mm-hmm. But he scared us. Especially, I can remember going into his class. For the first time, he gave us a test on the first day as we're going into class, and it was like, wait a second, we haven't learned anything yet. So we all started with this failing grade, and then we had to, I know, right? And then we had to pull ourselves up from there. Now, he gave us the opportunity to do that, but that was a very early, business. And he ran our classroom like a newsroom. I can tell you, we used to do these mock interviews with him, like as if we were interviewing for a job. And he would do this sort of like, tell me 5 people, living or dead, that you would have dinner with, and you tell me right now. And it was this sort of thing that he was trying to get you to think on your feet. Now, his mock interviews were far more intense than any interview that I had for a job in the actual business. But he made sure that we were prepared for that sort of thing. We had deadlines, he had high standards, and today I appreciate that so much because you got to have that initial tape that it was tape back when.
Right.
Not giving away how long ago this was, but we were still doing tapes.
How can you tell me you're old without telling me you're old?
There it is. Because I remember, DVD was already starting to creep into things, but I remember the conversation that he had with us was, everybody's got a VHS player, so make sure you got your reel on VHS, because every news director out there is going to be able to pop in that VHS. Anyway, going off on a tangent, to have the material to even make that first tape, to get that first job, you had to have some pretty okay stuff on there.
Right.
He made sure that we had that if we were serious about this. And he weeded out the people who weren't serious pretty quick. And I appreciate him doing all of that so much because it did launch me on the right foot. We actually, he and I went to Honduras in 2006, and we did a little documentary together about the efforts that MTSU was taking in a community there to help rebuild some schools, and so that was a really important experience. I had never been into Honduras before, and then putting a small documentary together with him, that was an unforgettable experience.
Yeah, you do all of that to get that first job, whatever it takes to crack the door.
Yeah.
And then at some point, you figured out, okay, I'm good at telling stories here. And when you were at Channel 4, you were also influenced by Terry Bulger, who is also a great storyteller.
So I interned at 4 in 2000, cough, cough, cough.
Yeah.
And
mine was 84 when I interned there. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. And so I used to shadow Terry when I was a student. I was total pest because I always wanted to prove to everybody I'm serious about this. I want to get into this business.
Right.
I've worked on this and this and this while I'm at MTSU. So sorry, Terry. I realize now how much of a pest I was. But I used to shadow Terry, and a photographer that a lot of people in Nashville will know. His name was Pat Slattery. And so Terry and Pat, they worked together really, really well. And that was what I really took away from Terry was his ability to, first of all, he could walk into a room and he knew who he wanted to tell the story about. Because a lot of times you're telling this broader story, but you want to see it through the eyes of a particular person. And Terry had a really good sense for that. He could just scan over a room. That's the interesting person right there that I want to tell this story through. And so he would put the microphone on them, and then Terry would just step back. He would want that person to just go about their business for a while, and he would be a fly on the wall, and Terry would get those wonderful bits of sound from that. And so that was probably the main thing that I took from Terry. And then a few years later, I got to be Terry's photographer on occasion.
Wow. And then after your tenure there, now you're at Channel 5, and it seems to me, and you tell me if I'm wrong, that about 95% of what you do is, quote, enterprise. That you pick your own subject. At the morning planning meeting, they're not saying, okay, Forrest, here's what we need you to do today. Well, last week being, a different kind of story.
That was all hands on deck.
That was all hands on deck last week, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But to be able to generate your own content and these what a lot of us of a certain age would remember as happy features.
Yes.
Huell Hauser happy features. And that, where does are people eager to jump in and say, hey, here's this idea, or how do you come up with your ideas?
They do. I think that's kind of the beauty of being around for a minute, as I kind of know some interesting people at this point, and interesting people know interesting people. So if anybody wants to give me any story ideas, you can feel free to do that at forrest.sanders@newschannel5.com.
Exactly.
But beyond that, it's interesting what story will lead into another story. That I do a piece on somebody and they happen to know somebody who's also really interesting. Knowing a lot of people who are artists, that leads to good stories, and musicians especially. We're such a music town, and so you get in those circles, and they're going to tell you about some interesting people, and that's what I'm kind of out to find. And you're right, Channel 5 has been really, really cool about it. That if a story speaks to me, they're going to hear me out about it and say, this is why this story is really cool, and then I end up working on those pieces.
Yeah. All right. Well, Forrest Sanders is our guest, and speaking of interesting people, Brian Barrett is here to take us to break, and we'll have more with Forrest Sanders coming up next right here on WGNS. Chip Walters here with Exit Realty Bob Lamb & Associates. I was named a top 10 agent in the #1 Exit Realty office in America in 2021. The top question I get around town, how's the market? Good question. And the answer's changed a few times this year alone. I'd like to know what you've heard and share some solid data we have. Give me a call and let's have a cup of coffee and take a look at what's happening in your neighborhood. All my contact info is right on my website, choosechip.net. I'm Chip Walters with Exit Realty Bob Lamb & Associates.
If you want to get some barbecue, I'll tell you how to do it. Head for the Slick Pig and you're into it. Just walk through the door at 1920 East Main and your nose will send a message right to your brain. Say, smells good, and barbecue. Slick Pig. We got ribs and beans. Got spicy wings. Slick Pig.
A Murfreesboro tradition. 1920 East Main.
Hey fellas, need an annual health exam for work or just to start the year prioritizing your health? I recommend Low T Center to get your complete health assessment. They check all your levels, not just your testosterone. Typically, it's completely covered by most health insurance, and if you don't have insurance, it's less than $100 for full labs and an office visit with the provider. Low T Center specializes in men's health, making it quick and easy. Go to lowtcenter.com now to book your appointment online. Low T Center, reinventing men's healthcare.
It was big news when Oakland and Riverdale schools opened their doors. Now, 50 years later, the first graduating classes are celebrating with a reunion the first weekend of June. If you are a friend or family of a 73 graduate, please be sure they are aware of this momentous event by informing them of our website to register.
Visit Oakland Riverdale Class 1973.com. Again, that's Oakland Riverdale Class 1973.com.
Absolute deadline is May 15th.
I am very pleased with Adams Place. All the people are very kind. I've got everything I need, and the caregivers come in and say, "What can I do for you?" or "Do you need anything?"
We're talking with Betty Atterbury.
Adams Place, one of the best places in Rutherford County.
I'm Terry Deal. Call me for more information about Adams Place. 1927 Memorial Boulevard, across from Walmart.
It's Good Neighbor Events. Brought to you by AmeriCare Pest Control, Cardinal Realty Solutions, and the law offices of John Day.
Let the experts at Cardinal Realty Solutions, based in Murfreesboro, help you with your Middle Tennessee real estate needs.
We were first-time home buyers.
Selling and buying a home can be stressful. Find a realtor you can trust at CardinalRealtySolutions.com.
Listen each weekday morning at 9 o'clock for the Roundtable here on News Radio WGNS. Interesting hosts and guests with the news, views, politics, sports, and people that are shaping Rutherford County here on News Radio WGNS.
Let's check those WGNS Good Neighbor events. And if you are a member of the first graduating class of Oakland or Riverdale high schools, your joint reunion will be June 2nd and 3rd. But you need to RSVP by May the 15th. And you can do that online at Oakland Riverdale Class 1973.com. Hey, don't forget, Shred Day is this Saturday, starting at 9 o'clock in the morning, over at Wilson Bank and Trust, the one at 3110 Memorial Boulevard. They start shredding at 9 o'clock Saturday morning. It ends when the truck's full. Once again, Shred Day this Saturday starts at 9 o'clock at Wilson Bank and Trust on Memorial Boulevard. Are you a retired Rutherford County teacher? Listen closely. The Retired Teachers Association has their monthly meeting on Tuesday, April the 11th, 1:30 in the afternoon at the North Boulevard Church of Christ. And the Center for the Arts Backstage Bash is coming up Saturday evening, April 22nd. Those are WGNS Good Neighbor events.
Good Neighbor weather.
We'll see a few spotty showers and thunderstorms possible late this afternoon. Otherwise, partial sunshine develops, a high in the mid-80s. Tonight, chance for rain and storms, a low of 50. I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki on News Radio WGNS. Currently, it's 73.
WGNS is powered by Middle Tennessee Electric. MTE's Plugged In podcast focuses on the world of electric vehicles. Stay up to date on the EV world, hear interviews with experts, and more. Listen on your favorite podcast platform or visit mte.com/pluggedin.
This is the Roundtable from News Radio WGNS on FM 101.9 and AM 1450 Murfreesboro, FM 100.5 Smyrna, and worldwide at WGNSradio.com.
Forrest Sanders of News Channel 5 is our guest today. Coming up next Wednesday, David Urban, the outgoing dean of the Jones College of Business at Middle Tennessee. And in 3 weeks, Matthew Moat will be here. We'll be getting your spring gardening ready to go, so be ready for that. Forrest is with News Channel 5 and with great feature stories. One that his most recent story ran last night, as a matter of fact, on Channel 5 about right here in Rutherford County, the community of Milton, and how it is having a bit of a rebirth. And here's how it sounded last night on News Channel 5.
You know, change comes in all forms, and we've certainly seen a lot of it here in Middle Tennessee, especially recent years. A couple of years ago, one local couple decided to take a big risk and bring back something very special. To get there, though, it's taken a lot of hard work. Here's News Channel 5's Forrest Sanders.
Out in Rutherford County, there's the little community of Milton.
My family's been here. I think I'm the 8th generation.
Farmers Philip and Elena Vaught know the history very well. of a once thriving place.
There was a gas station.
There were 3 general stores right here in this area.
This used to be an old country store, which was very popular. People would come, they may buy lunch meat, they may buy canned food. When it became Cherry's Grocery is what most people remember it from. For a long period of time, it was the only black and white television. It was in the back of the store.
So Milton, established in 1820, once a busy community. What happened that made it go so quiet? Well, you're looking at it.
So this used to be the main road, and then now we have Highway 96.
Perhaps people were driving right by Milton.
Milton's been kind of lost for the past, 15 years, I guess 20 years.
The old store was vacant for about 8 years. When Philip saw it was up for sale.
I accidentally stopped at an auction one morning.
Philip literally called me one morning and said, "Do we want to get in?" And I said, "Get in what?"
We bought it.
And I said, "My gosh, what have we done?" It was in terrible shape, terrible shape.
But then the Vaughts realized the potential of this old store.
The Gathering at Milton.
It's now an event venue for weddings, baby showers, you name it.
Most of the porch is original.
They've also just restored a 1920 bank building into the Vault event venue. The next project is restoring what used to be a doctor's office. And the people around here just have to stop and tell the Vaughts they love Milton's return.
Oh, they wave and holler at us.
Always positive comments.
Thank you so much for what you've done. You guys have saved Milton.
We were born and reared in this area. My father was able to brick this building as part of his classwork.
It is such a sense of pride. The fact that we've saved a piece of history is incredible.
I'm Forrest Sanders, News Channel 5.
And Forrest Sanders here in the studio with us. And let's take that story as an example. From idea to putting it together and the sense of satisfaction when you see the finished product and are able to tell that story in a very concise manner, but very interesting.
Thank you. Well, Patsy sent it to me.
Oh, okay.
This woman named Patsy, she sent me several story ideas, and I've actually ended up doing all 3 of them. Another one of them, they were all Murfreesboro related, actually. There was one about a woman who's 90 years old, who's been working over at the McFarland Community Center. She answers the phones there, and she makes hot water cornbread over there, which I'd never had before. I was interviewing her. And
you haven't been to Clearview then?
No. Well, I mean, look, I'm Tennessee born and raised, and my extended family's from Arkansas, so maybe I should have had hot water cornbread before. But I'm interviewing this woman, and somehow we go off on this tangent. You know, she's mic'd up and everything, and then I tell her, "Well, I've never had that hot water cornbread before." And then she's like, "Well, let me make you some." It's like, "Well, I guess we're rolling with that." And she just goes and she makes us some. So anyway, she gave me that story. She also told me about the Reef Sane reopening, the pharmacy with the famous milkshakes, and then she gave me the Milton story. It's like all 3 of these are pretty good, and so that's where the story came from. And then just had to make contact with the Vaughts, figure out a morning that we could go out there and figure out their story. And luckily, this was a pretty easy story to work because the Vaughts have everything that I need out there. They've got all the old pictures of what that area used to look like. They've got a photo album of pictures that they've collected. There are pictures on the walls of these event venues that they have restored in a beautiful area out there. I'm sure that it makes a great spot.
Well, you know, but I don't know if that's the same building that Manuel's Cajun restaurant used to be in. Yeah. And they'd play Cajun music out there on Saturday nights on the front porch. So,
I would have loved to have worked a story about that.
That would have been, but Abe, I think, has passed away and his family, but they got rid of it, and then now you've got the folks who have it now, the Vaughts, and just a really terrific story about an area of our community that, you know, I don't think it's ever been forgotten, but, you know, Las Casas has kind of exploded out there with a lot of homes being built. Same thing's going on for Milton now, and for them to have something in that area of the county to kind of to rally around, and I think that store in that event space now is going to be something neat.
Yeah, it's a beautiful area. You're driving up the road and you can see it coming up in the distance. It's just a great little spot. I kind of wanted to get the footage at night just because I figure like when you got the lights going and everything, I'm sure it's really, really beautiful then, and especially the sounds of that area. And just how quiet it is out there. I think it would be a pretty terrific place to have an event. So anyway, the VOTS. Interesting people.
Yeah.
Interesting people is what I'm at.
Yep. The other thing that when people watch your stories, I think they need to keep in mind, and you alluded to it just a little bit earlier, is that you're a solo. Mm-hmm. You're an MMJ, a multimedia journalist. You are your own photographer. You do your own interviews. And as you mentioned, I think in an off-air conversation a little bit earlier, sometimes you have to get a little creative to get the shots and all of that. Tell folks your process of how that goes down, and when you end up doing a story about a runner and you need to find a way to lock that camera down somewhere. You have to get creative.
GoPros. That's one of the ways to go. I've got all these different mounts for my GoPro, which run into Best Buy or shop online. I'm old school. I like walking into a store and just picking up stuff. But that's been one of the fun ways to do it. So one of my favorite things that I have is this headband that you can attach your GoPro to, so you can see from the vantage point of the person.
Almost like a miner's light,
yes,
kind of.
That's exactly what it looks like. And so I was getting some footage the other day of people playing pickleball, and so I've got my regular camera is like, well, I want to put a headband camera on somebody while they're playing pickleball, so you get to see from their vantage point of like the paddle and hitting the ball, and these are just things that you kind of sprinkle in to just give the story a little bit of extra oomph, is get those kind of creative shots from somebody's vantage point, and hopefully that kind of spices things up a bit.
Yeah, absolutely it does. And the type of stories that you do, in this case, the story about Milton, it has a very historical perspective.
Yeah.
Another one that you've done in the last week or two is about a hairstylist in Franklin.
I'm glad that you brought this one up. That was a fun story.
The hairstylist in Franklin, who is let me get this right.
Yeah.
An ETA, an Elvis tribute artist.
Yeah, Chip, they don't like being called impersonators.
Yeah, that's right.
I know nothing about this. So, like, when I was talking to...
I'm a huge Elvis fan, by the way.
Okay.
So,
have you heard of ETAs before?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
But not in that terminology.
Right.
I've heard, he's an Elvis impersonator or an Elvis tribute guy, and that's what it turns out to be.
That's what they prefer to be called. Like these guys took it really, really seriously too. I think that the way that they viewed a quote-unquote impersonator is somebody who is doing kind of a caricature of Elvis, and they are wanting to respect the man. They're trying to kind of, I guess, keep things down to like, well, this is what Elvis legitimately would have dressed like. This is legitimately how he would have done his hair. These are the moves that the man would have made. But anyway, so he is a hairstylist in Franklin called the Blue Suede Salon.
That's right.
Yeah, great name. His name's Ryan Collingwood, and so Ryan is an ETA, which is an Elvis tribute artist. He performs as Elvis in addition to being this hairstylist. He got into hairstyling through legitimate means because he admired Elvis, and just he admired that confidence that Elvis had. Of course, Elvis had great hair.
Yeah.
So naturally, you're going to end up working in hair, like when you value that much. My favorite part of Ryan's story is that Ryan is a hairstylist for other ETAs.
that was the part that just brought it all right back.
I love
it's
it.
just like, you're kidding me.
They travel from all over
to
to come and get their hair done the right way to go perform. So the guy that was there while I was getting footage, the ETA,
he looked about 12.
I know. Well, he's in his 20s, but I know, like, after a while, like, everybody starts looking 12. I'm there too, Chip.
Yeah.
He is about to play Elvis in $1 Million Quartet in Branson in the production. I'm sure some of you have probably seen $1 Million Quartet. It's about the Sun Records recording session with Elvis, Johnny Cash, Jerry Lee Lewis, and I think it's Carl Perkins is the other one. Famous moment. And I think a lot of people have seen the famous picture of this actual a recording session that happened. So anyway, these guys were also taking part in the Nashville Elvis Festival at the same time that I was getting these shots. And so it's this competition for all these different ETAs, Elvis tribute artists.
Now, was it pure luck that the Elvis competition was going on at the same time you were doing the story, or did you plan it that way?
That way. I've been talking to Ryan for about a month and a half, but this is another part of it, is that you want to do the story at the right time. So obviously when there's an Elvis festival in town that Ryan was going to be participating in, and also was going to have some of his clients participating in, it was like, well, this is clearly the time that we need to be doing the story. But I thought that was so interesting, and it really speaks to Ryan's character that the people that he's competing against, he's doing their hair in the Elvis cut. I feel like if it was me, I might throw it a little, like give him a Wayne Newton cut or something. But Ryan's not that kind of guy. He gives them, like, he wants them to look good, and so he gives them the cut that makes sense to the decade of Elvis that they're performing in.
Right.
Because that's a fair point. 50s Elvis has a bit of a different cut than 60s Elvis, which has a bit of a different cut than 70s Elvis.
Right.
And I think that's how they break down the competition, is you have divisions of, like, you can compete as a 70s Elvis, or, with the jumpsuit, or a 50s Elvis in the jailhouse rock vibe. And I appreciate this story, too, being from right outside of Memphis. I know a thing or two about Elvis.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
You do, and you presented that one very well. Forrest Sanders,
I made a fried peanut butter and banana sandwich.
I did. I noticed that. Did you actually like it?
Well, I burned it.
You burned it? Okay.
Well, the thing is that you're supposed to toast the bread before you fry it, and so I wasn't taking enough consideration into the fact that.
Understand.
Yeah.
Another story for another time. Forrest Sanders of News Channel 5. Again, if you have story ideas for him, forrest.sanders@newschannel5.com. We'll come back with our final segment, as this hour is flying by on this Wednesday, and glad to have you with us here on the Roundtable on WGNS.
Does your home need freshening up? Let our family at Farrah Construction help you. We do painting, new flooring, anything that you need. If you can dream it, Farrah Construction can turn it into reality. Farrah Construction offers high-quality craftsmanship, quick response, and attention to detail. For home restoration at a price you can afford, Farrah Construction can get the job done, no matter how big or small it is. I'm Ron Hall. Shop local. Let our family business help you. Farrah Construction Company.
This is Dr. David Morris with Magnolia Medical Center. Do you suffer from peripheral neuropathy in your hands or feet, burning pain, balance problems, and decreased quality of life? Magnolia Medical Center can help.
Magnolia Medical Center in Murfreesboro. Online at magnoliamedicalcenters.com.
Here at Bud's Tire, we make buying Michelin tires simpler. I'm Allison Mitchell with Bud's Tire Pros. We offer a straightforward approach to service, including nationwide warranties with every purchase. Stop in today to see our full lineup of Michelin and BF Goodrich tires. For whatever you drive, Michelin and BF Goodrich have a tire to fit any need. Bud's Tire Pros, hassle-free, guaranteed. We're located on East Main Street, exactly 3 miles from the town square, 1 mile past Rutherford Boulevard. Visit us online at budstirepros.tn.com.
I'm Rodney French from French's Shoes and Boots in Murfreesboro. I'd like to invite you over to our hometown store, 1837 South Church Street. French's Shoes and Boots has been serving Rutherford County with the best selection of work boots, western boots, and a great selection of shoes and accessories. Our bargain room is full of famous brand shoes and boots up to 90% off mall prices. Brands like Clark's, Merrill, Justin, and Ariat. Tons of shoes and tons of brands, all at super great prices.
French's Shoes and Boots.
1837 South Church Street in Murfreesboro.
Seniors helping seniors in-home care services.
This is Danielle Rutherford. We make your life easier by providing compassionate care in the comfort of your own home.
Seniors helping seniors. Clean my house.
Online at shsmiddletn.com.
My name is Jennifer Sanchez. I'm the manager over Steered Straight Thrift Stores.
At Steered Straight Thrift Stores, we work with local school students
to help them understand the consequences
of adverse behavior.
At Steered Straight, we focus on prevention.
We employ over 20 people from all walks of life.
And each of us has a story.
Mine is of recovery.
Steered Straight Thrift Stores.
1007 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard and 845 Middle Tennessee Jaffa Church.
This is the Roundtable from News Radio WGNS on FM 101.9 and AM 1450 Murfreesboro, FM 100.5 Smyrna, and worldwide at WGNSradio.com.
Back with Forrest Sanders here on WGNS on this Wednesday. Again, David Urban, the retiring dean of the Jones College of Business at MTSU, who is also a great storyteller, will be here next week to talk about his tenure and the rise of the Jones College at Middle Tennessee. And Forrest, last week, every news organization in the area, as you mentioned, all hands on deck is one way to put it. But it was everybody in the entire area turned to our television stations, our radio stations, the internet, all of that. And the one thing that I came away with last week is that, in particular, our TV stations, 2, 4, 5, 17, they reported what was going on with an extremely high level of humanity, and I think for once we didn't see people trying to jump the gun and do things. They kind of let things play out, and Don Aaron and the police department took control of that situation. Talk a little bit about what it was like within a news organization when that kind of story breaks and continues to have to be covered the rest of the week.
Well, a tragedy of that level, that's our community too. And
Right.
I think that's part of it. Being in a newsroom when that happens, the first thing that went out that got shouted in the newsroom, because I was sitting in there at the time, was that there's been some sort of incident at a school. You don't know what that is yet. They were like, well, let's send somebody over there just to see what's happening. And then slowly you start to realize, oh, this is one of the worst days in Nashville's history. And then you get the full scope of it eventually of how terrible this is. Hannah McDonald, who is a member of our newsroom, her mother-in-law was in the Covenant School.
Alex Apple's mother.
Yes.
Yeah, Alex used to be a reporter at Fox 17.
Yes.
So
we had those sorts of connections. We know people who are in the Covenant School, and I think that brought a major levity to what was happening. And then after that, it's this sort of thing of how do we work with the community during all of this. During those days, I was interviewing a lot of people who were grief counselors, people who are part of church communities who are around there, who are opening their doors. And it's telling the story of the tragedy, but also what our community is doing in the midst of that tragedy. I got to meet some really wonderful people during that time who because of their quick action, they helped this situation. I got to interview the bus drivers a week ago on Wednesday for Metro Schools, because the Covenant Schools, it's not part of
right.
It's
a private school,
correct? And so Metro Schools, their bus drivers jumped into action in that moment, and they didn't ask a lot of questions. Those bus drivers ran to their buses, drove over to the Covenant School, and picked up the kids and drove them over to where their parents are. And to get to talk to people who did something like that on that day is quite something.
Yeah, and each one of those, they should not ever diminish their role of what they did during that time. And I think you had one story with I know you talked about grief counselors, but with religious leaders who help step in, because I think everybody kind of turned to their faith that day. And the other thing is too, that I think about, Carrie Sharp was on the air so much that day. She really, from the scene, I thought brought the sensibilities of a mother into that, and a humanness, and reporters and anchors were not afraid to talk about the need for prayer and faith on a day like that.
One of the church I was in two churches that Monday, and one of them was Calvary Methodist, which is right up the road. I think they're only about a mile away from the Covenant School, and so it was kind of talking to them. What do you even say to your congregation after something like this that is so horrific? What do you say?
Right.
And and then I also went over to Brentwood Methodist, and I think the answer that they agreed on with this was just that they just wanted to provide a space where people to come to. It's hard to have the right words in a moment like that. What are you supposed to say?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, just having these spaces that are open for people to come and just for them to express whatever they need to express. Perhaps that's the important thing for spaces like that to be at that time.
Yeah, there's no really textbook definition of how you're supposed to handle that.
Right.
Yeah. So it certainly was a story that continues. I mean, even yesterday, a big part of that story happened with Chief Drake and the officers who actually went in, and it's it really, with the body cam video that they released so quickly, the security video from within the school that they released so quickly, it made it real quick.
Yep.
Yeah, it was something else. But as cliche as it is, our thoughts and prayers are definitely still with those people. And it was one more example, just like whether it was the downtown tornado that came through, and obviously like we had here in the county last weekend, and folks in this area, they are great about jumping in and helping out their fellow man. A lot of times we have our differences, but when things like this happen,
you got to put all of that aside.
Yeah, not only in the news business, but in life, it does become all hands on deck, and you see those stories every day.
Yes, you always want to highlight the good people in your community. I'm really glad that I get to be a person who does that. That I get to talk to the people who are doing good things and are just making our community more interesting as well. And it can be in any variety of ways. It's like I was saying earlier, just kind of going to the broader feature storytelling. I don't know the first thing about somebody who's an Elvis tribute artist. I don't know the first thing about. I interviewed a woman who hula hoops fire for a living at one point. I don't know the first thing about that, but I love being able to be a fly on the wall and see that world for a little bit and learn something about that. And I'm glad that these people are around, just making it so much more interesting.
I want to give you 3 different names, or actually 4 different names, and I want you to kind of give me your thoughts. I mentioned Huell Hauser earlier. Mm-hmm. He was kind of the granddad of the Nashville market of happy features and storytelling. When you were at Channel 4 for 12 years, did you learn much about, did people ever mention him to you and say, oh, you might be the next Huell Hauser?
I don't know if they were saying that.
Yeah.
That would have been nice.
Yeah.
But
now he does the PBS, or did the PBS show California's Gold for many years after he left Channel 4 and moved to California. So
I know the name. Of course, I wouldn't have seen him broadcast or anything like that. When do you think he would have left Nashville?
Oh, gosh, it would have been the late 70s.
Okay.
Probably early 80s, right in there.
Well, the name is still out there.
Yeah.
He's a known person. But
he's not one of those that he would have been in your circle. I understand that.
I just know the name.
We mentioned Terry Bulger's name earlier.
Yep.
What does Terry mean to you?
Well, like I mentioned, when I was in college, I did get to shadow Terry a little bit, and then I got to work with Terry a few years later, early on because the first year I was at 4, I was a photographer. I'm still a photographer, but I wasn't reporting in addition to it. I was a photographer, and I got to work with Terry during that time. It was the attention to detail and just his ability to know. Terry knows what direction that he wants a story to go in, and I don't know how to put it, but like lots of pitches come in, you know which one is the Terry story. He's very focused on what he's after, and he knows what he wants. He's been doing this for so long. He's got his the way he does things is just down to an art. That's Terry.
Yeah. Maybe the godfather of feature and people stories, Charles Kuralt.
Mm-hmm. I have heard his name thrown around a lot too. Is like, well, I'm glad that somebody that we've got some people in the market who are doing Charles Kuralt type stories.
Right.
One of my professors from MTSU, her name is Mary Nichols. She is a huge fan of Charles Kuralt, and she's been nice enough to say that some of my stuff might remind her of Charles Kuralt.
Well, the other name that I think hands down your stuff reminds me of all the time is Steve Hartman from CBS.
Early on, while I was at WBKO in Bowling Green, that was my first market. I was working a story, and Steve Hartman showed up, and he was also going to be working that same story. I'm like, ooh, mine's not going to look like much compared to his.
Wow.
But yeah, like and Steve Martin's the guy.
I bet he wasn't shooting his own stuff.
He would no. I'm sure he was working one of the best in the nation. But yeah, like what Steve Hartman does, I feel that is so important to have those segments that are part of a newscast, so that we are also highlighting the really good people that we have in our community. It's a big thing that we're focused on. That at 5, they want to have that the positivity in every single newscast.
That was my next question. What does it say about the management and at Channel 5 that they do want to put resources toward that? Because right now there's a trend in the TV news business to go as cheap and as young as you can sometimes, which everybody needs a first job. But Channel 5 seems to have invested over the years in veteran reporters and anchors, and it shows with the on-air product.
Yeah, and I think that's very important to have the people around who kind of have these specialties and everything, and also just the willingness to run a longer story. That Elvis tribute artist piece was 4 minutes long,
right?
And I didn't have to go to battle for that. I just explained the story. I told them it's fun and it's going to bring some light to the newscast, and they're like, go for it. And it was a story because it had layers to it. This is something else that I like, stories that have layers, that I get to reveal what this layer is, and then we got another layer to it. And you need a little bit of extra time to get those layers in, and also just feel the impact of the emotion of the story in some other pieces. Yeah.
So there it is. Now, you obviously have to always provide grist for the mill, so to speak. And as we were talking off the air, that several stories that you had planned for last week kind of obviously got put on hold with the situation up there. So what should folks be looking for over the next couple of weeks from Forrest Sanders on Channel 5?
I've got another piece that's running tonight that's a fun one. There is this a cappella group over at Belmont. They're called the Pitchmen, and so they are part of this national a cappella performing competition. I'm blanking on the name of the competition right now, but it's the same one that's in the Pitch Perfect movies. And so they won this regional competition. A couple of these guys, when they were freshmen at Belmont back in 2020, they're going to go to New York and compete in this huge a cappella national competition. But it's 2020, so guess what happened?
Oh, wow.
The whole thing got canceled. And so now they're seniors at Belmont, and they have won that regional competition again. And so now, as seniors, they're getting to go to New York to perform in this national a cappella competition. I got to be a fly on the wall for a minute. See, I know nothing about a cappella singers, but I love just getting to be in the presence of these interesting people. So I got to be there at the rehearsal, and also one of their gigs that they were performing. I thought that they sounded amazing. It's a whole bunch of guys. I want to see that there's 18 of them, but don't quote me on that. Watch the story tonight, and I'll know by then.
It's bigger than a barbershop quartet, obviously.
Yeah. It's several barbershop quartets all mixed in there together. But I mean, they sound terrific. Every one of these guys is an amazing singer, and then there's also, they do all this choreography and all this stuff that they have to be mindful of. But also keeping in mind, these are guys who are going to a national competition, so of course they're going to be really, really good, and they're going to be performing in New York in a couple of months. But plans that were derailed by COVID that have they're getting to have that opportunity after all, which is really cool.
Yeah, it is. It is. Okay, hey, we got here in our last minute or so, we did have a listener that sent in a list of the winters, which are the cold snaps in the spring. We just got locust winter was first, redbud winter we just got finished with because all the redbud trees bloomed. Next, dogwood winter's coming up. That typically happens right around Easter, which it will this year. Early to mid-May, you have blackberry winter. Then whippoorwill winter, mid to late May, which I don't know that I've ever heard of. And then this one I promise you I've not heard of, and I've heard of a lot of stuff. Cotton breeches winter. That is coming up late May through early June. So check the old Farmer's Almanac and for stuff like that. Everybody be weather aware late this afternoon and early evening between, as Bree Smith says, between 6 and 9 tonight is when we have a chance for some interesting weather to come through. And interesting guest today for us. Thanks so much for coming down and coming over. It really means a lot. Yeah, appreciate it so much. And folks, if you missed any of this, you can catch it on the podcast coming up on WGNSradio.com. Again, David Urban from the Jones College of Business will be my guest next Wednesday. But coming up in just a few minutes, Brian Barrett will be here all day on the Big G WGNS.